Stop chasing people. Stop chasing approval. Stop chasing distractions. The real change in a person's life begins the moment they turn their attention inward, away from the noise of the world and toward the quiet, powerful work of building themselves. Every day spent improving from within is a day spent constructing a stronger future. When a person stops measuring their journey against the journeys of others and begins mastering their own path instead, something remarkable happens. Opportunities appear where none seemed to exist before. Clarity rises in place of confusion. Confidence grows not from what others say, but from what a person sees in themselves. Work on yourself consistently and quietly, and in time, much of what you were exhausting yourself chasing will begin moving naturally in your direction. There are 4 principles at the heart of this transformation: self-focus over distraction, discipline as the architect of your future, improvement over comparison, and consistency as the force that attracts success. Each of these principles is simple to understand, each of them is demanding to practice, and together they form the foundation of every meaningful life ever built. The first principle is self-focus. Most people do not fail because they lack talent or opportunity. They fail because their attention is constantly pulled in too many directions at once. The mind is the most valuable asset a person possesses, and whatever controls a person's attention ultimately controls their life. When focus is scattered across unnecessary conversations, endless scrolling, random opinions, and everything that consumes energy without giving anything meaningful in return, life becomes noisy, progress becomes slow, and clarity quietly disappears. Self-focus is not selfishness. It is the decision to invest time, energy, and thought into the things that actually build character, sharpen skills, and shape the future. Every person receives a limited supply of energy each day, and where that energy is directed determines what kind of life is created from it. Energy poured into distraction produces confusion and delay. Energy poured into learning, discipline, and deliberate improvement produces growth and strength. The difference between those who build something meaningful and those who remain stuck is very often not intelligence, but the management of attention. Distractions are designed to feel irresistible. They are easy, comfortable, and instantly rewarding in the moment, but they leave a person empty afterward, with nothing to show for the hours spent. Self-focus, by contrast, requires effort, patience, and sometimes genuine discomfort. But it creates something distractions never can: lasting satisfaction and compounding results. When a person chooses to study instead of scrolling, to practice instead of procrastinating, to plan instead of drifting, they are quietly building a stronger version of themselves. It may not feel significant in the moment, but over time it compounds into results that cannot be ignored. One of the most corrosive habits in modern life is the constant comparison of one's own journey to the curated journeys of others. People observe what others are achieving or displaying, and they forget their own path entirely. Comparison creates pressure that has no productive outlet, and it destroys the inner peace that sustained effort requires. Self-focus breaks this cycle by returning a person's attention to the only competition that actually matters, the person they were yesterday. Instead of asking why someone else appears to be ahead, the self-focused person asks how they can improve their own skills, mindset, and habits. This shift in questioning changes everything because it restores attention to the only domain a person can actually control. Control is the foundation of self-focus. A person cannot control the world, but they can control their response to it. They can control their routine, their decisions, their discipline, and the direction of their energy. When focus is placed on these controllable areas, life becomes more stable and purposeful. Distractions lose much of their power because the person is no longer reacting to everything around them. They are choosing, deliberately and intentionally, what deserves their attention and what does not. Building self-focus requires practice. At first, the mind resists because it has grown accustomed to constant stimulation. sitting with a single task, working without interruption, resisting the pull of distraction, all of it feels uncomfortable in the beginning. But this discomfort is temporary. It is simply the mind adjusting to a new standard of discipline. Every time a distraction is resisted, the capacity for focus strengthens. The key is not perfection, but awareness. The moment a person notices their attention has drifted, they return it to their goal, without judgment and without delay. This simple habit, repeated daily, builds a mental strength that becomes one of the most powerful forces in a person's life. Self-focus also transforms decision-making. When the mind is no longer constantly overloaded with outside noise, thinking becomes clearer. A person begins to understand more accurately what truly matters and what is simply temporary excitement. This clarity produces better choices in relationships, in work, in education, and in personal development. The self-focused person stops reacting emotionally to everything and begins responding with intention. In the end, self-focus is a lifelong discipline. It is not something achieved once and permanently held. It is the quiet, daily decision to return to oneself again and again, no matter how many times the world attempts to pull attention elsewhere. And with time, this discipline transforms everything it touches: mindset, habits, confidence, and the shape of the future itself. The second principle is discipline. Everything meaningful in life is created through consistent action, not sudden inspiration. Motivation arrives and departs according to its own rhythm. Discipline, by contrast, remains present even when feeling nothing. It is the ability to choose long-term growth over short-term comfort, and that single ability separates those who struggle indefinitely from those who ultimately succeed. Every great achievement visible in the world is not the result of one fortunate moment. It is the result of repeated effort carried out when no one was watching and when no one was cheering. Discipline is not about being perfect every single day. It is about showing up even on the days that feel exhausting, distracted, or unmotivated. It is about doing what needs to be done, regardless of mood or circumstance. Many people wait for the right time, the right feeling, the right conditions before they begin. But disciplined people understand that the right time is not found. It is created through action. The future does not change through thinking alone. It changes when a person consistently does the work that moves them forward. Discipline creates structure, and structure is what transforms scattered potential into focused achievement. Without structure, life becomes random. Important tasks are delayed, time is wasted, and progress slips away almost imperceptibly. But when discipline enters a life, things begin to align. A person wakes up with purpose, plans their day with intention, and uses their hours wisely. Even small disciplined habits, waking early, studying regularly, practicing a skill, moving the body, begin to shape identity. Over time, these small actions construct a foundation that can support extraordinary things. One of the most powerful aspects of discipline is the way it works without demanding recognition. Results may not appear immediately, but every disciplined action is quietly adding value to the future self. Consider the image of building a wall, one brick at a time. A single brick seems almost meaningless, but placed consistently, day after day, it becomes something solid and unbreakable. Every disciplined choice operates exactly this way, adding invisible strength to what is being built. Missing one day causes little damage, but repeated inconsistency weakens the entire structure over time. Discipline also teaches something that has enormous practical value: the ability to govern emotions. Many people fail not because they lack knowledge of what to do, but because they cannot manage how they feel in the moment. Laziness tells them to rest, discouragement tells them to quit, boredom persuades them to stop early. Discipline teaches a person to rise above these temporary signals. Feelings are not commands, they are simply passing information. A disciplined person learns to act according to their goals rather than according to their mood, and this capacity changes the entire architecture of what they can accomplish. Delayed gratification is another dimension of discipline that deserves serious attention. The world constantly offers instant pleasure, entertainment, shortcuts, and effortless distraction. These things feel genuinely good in the moment, but they borrow from the future. Discipline is the ability to decline these short-term rewards in order to honor long-term commitments. It is choosing practice over procrastination, study over distraction, sustained effort over temporary comfort. The ability to delay gratification has been shown, repeatedly and across many domains, to be one of the strongest predictors of meaningful success in life. Discipline also builds confidence through a mechanism that many overlook. Every time a person keeps a promise to themselves, their self-trust deepens. Every completed commitment proves to the mind that the person is reliable, that their word means something. People often search for confidence in external validation, in the opinions and approval of others, but real confidence is built internally through the accumulation of kept commitments. When a person knows they can depend on themselves, the scope of what feels possible expands dramatically. Discipline creates momentum, and momentum changes everything. Once a person begins acting consistently, progress begins to accelerate. What initially required tremendous effort gradually becomes more natural because habits have formed. Habits reduce the mental energy required for action. What once demanded willpower eventually becomes automatic. A disciplined person does not wait for motivation. They operate through routine, and that routine carries them steadily forward even when life becomes difficult. Discipline also shapes identity in the deepest sense. A person does not become disciplined in a single moment of decision. They become it through repetition, through the accumulation of countless small choices made in favor of effort over ease. Eventually, discipline stops being something a person does and becomes something a person is. At that point, success is no longer a distant ambition, but the natural expression of who they have become. In the end, discipline is not restriction. It is the deepest form of freedom available to a human being. It frees a person from regret, from wasted time, from missed opportunities, and from the quiet erosion of self-doubt. It gives control over life and direction over the future. A disciplined person is no longer shaped by circumstance, but guided by purpose. And that is how a meaningful future is built, decision by decision, day by day, one quiet act of discipline at a time. The third principle is improvement over comparison. Comparison is one of the quietest ways a person loses their confidence and their sense of direction. When attention is fixed on what others are doing, achieving, or displaying, a person stops seeing their own progress clearly. They begin measuring their worth through someone else's journey, someone else's timeline, and someone else's results. But every person begins from a different starting point, carries different struggles, and moves at their own pace. Comparison measured against these realities rarely produces motivation. It produces frustration, insecurity, and self-doubt. The real shift happens when a person stops comparing and starts improving. Improvement is entirely personal. It does not depend on anyone else. It depends only on where a person stands today and where they choose to move tomorrow. When attention turns toward improvement, the question changes completely. Instead of asking why someone else appears to be further ahead, a person begins asking how they can become a stronger version of themselves. This change in questioning removes unnecessary pressure and replaces it with genuine purpose. Comparison distorts reality in a particular way. When a person looks at another's success, they tend to see the result while remaining blind to the effort, time, and struggle that produced it. The process remains invisible. The highlight is all that appears. This distorted view makes one's own journey feel smaller than it actually is. But when comparison is set aside, a person begins to appreciate their own progress honestly, even when that progress is gradual. They begin to understand something important, that growth is not measured by speed, but by direction. Improvement requires patience, which is itself a discipline. Growth does not arrive instantly. Skills take time to develop, habits take time to form, and results take time to become visible. When a person commits to improving rather than competing, they stop expecting overnight transformation and begin valuing daily effort. Even small steps come to matter deeply because they understand that consistency creates transformation. A single good day may not change a life, but many good days placed consistently in sequence will change it completely. Comparison also destroys motivation in a subtle and persistent way. A person may be genuinely progressing, but when they measure that progress against someone else's highlights, it feels like failure. This feeling can lead directly to discouragement, and discouragement to quitting. Improvement keeps a person grounded instead. It anchors their attention to the only meaningful competition, who they were yesterday compared to who they are today. Focusing on improvement also builds self-awareness in ways that comparison never can. A person who is genuinely invested in their own development begins to notice their strengths and their weaknesses with greater precision. They understand what requires work and what requires only continued consistency. This awareness produces better daily decisions. Instead of attempting to copy paths designed for different people, they begin constructing their own system, built around their specific needs and goals. They become intentional with their time, their energy, and their effort. Perhaps the most underappreciated benefit of choosing improvement over comparison is mental peace. Comparison places a person in a race they never chose to enter, one with no finish line, since there will always be someone further ahead in some area of life. If comparison continues indefinitely, satisfaction never arrives. But when a person focuses on improving themselves, they are no longer racing against others. They are building their own path. This brings clarity and calm to the mind because external pressure no longer governs internal experience. Improvement also builds a more durable form of confidence than any external validation ever could. Every skill developed, every weakness addressed, every habit established produces tangible proof of growth. This proof strengthens belief in a way that comparison consistently undermines. Confidence built through improvement does not depend on what others say or think. It is grounded in evidence a person has gathered about themselves through consistent effort. Everyone's journey unfolds according to its own timeline. Some achieve early, others achieve later. There is no fixed schedule for success, and no universal measure by which one journey can be fairly compared to another. When a person accepts this fully, comparison loses its power entirely. They realize their life is not behind or ahead, it is simply their own. And with that acceptance comes the freedom to focus completely on the only thing within their control, becoming better day by day than they were before. The fourth principle is consistency. Success is never the product of a single large action. It is the accumulated result of many small actions repeated faithfully over time. Most people observe success in others and perceive it as a sudden event, a breakthrough, a lucky moment, a dramatic turn of fortune. But what they are actually seeing is the visible surface of a process that was quiet, unglamorous, and deeply consistent for a very long time. Every repeated action lays another layer of progress, and over enough time, those layers become achievement that others describe as extraordinary. Consistency means showing up again and again, regardless of mood, regardless of motivation, regardless of circumstance. Working hard for one day is not difficult. Sustaining that effort across weeks and months, particularly when results remain invisible, is where most people stop. They expect quick returns, and when the returns do not arrive on schedule, they conclude that the effort is not working and abandon it. But success does not respond to brief bursts of energy. It responds to long-term commitment. When a person stays consistent, they send a message to themselves and to their goals that they are serious, that they intend to stay, and that they will not leave before the work is complete. One of the most powerful effects of consistency is momentum. In the beginning, progress is slow and almost impossible to perceive. Effort goes in, but visible change barely registers. This early period is where most abandonment occurs. Yet for those who persist through it, something begins to shift. Small improvements start to accumulate. What once felt genuinely difficult begins to feel manageable. What required conscious effort begins to become automatic. This is how habits are formed, and habits are the true infrastructure of success. Once strong habits are established, a person no longer depends on motivation to carry them forward. Their routine does that work instead. Consistency also builds trust within oneself, which is something that cannot be manufactured through any other means. Every time a person follows through on what they committed to, they strengthen their own self-belief. Many people struggle not because they lack ability, but because repeated broken promises to themselves have eroded their confidence in their own reliability. When consistency is practiced faithfully, even in small matters, self-trust is restored and deepened. This internal trust becomes the quiet foundation upon which discipline and genuine confidence are built. Patience is inseparable from consistency, and in the modern world, patience has become genuinely rare. The expectation of instant results has made slow, sustained effort feel inadequate to many people. But meaningful success has never arrived instantly, and it never will. Consistency teaches a person to remain patient through the invisible stages of growth, to trust that progress is occurring even when the evidence has not yet surfaced. Growth underground precedes any growth above it. A seed does not produce a tree in a day, and neither does consistent effort produce visible success in a week. But the growth is real, it is happening, and it continues as long as the effort continues. Consistency also develops skills in a way that occasional intensity never can. Every discipline, whether studying, writing, speaking, building a business, or developing any professional craft, improves through repetition. Daily practice, even modest in duration, compounds over months and years into genuine mastery. A person who practices consistently will eventually surpass someone who practices with greater intensity but no rhythm, because repetition builds depth that cannot be acquired any other way. Perhaps most profoundly, consistency shapes identity. A person does not arrive at success and then become consistent. They become consistent, and success follows as the natural expression of who they have become. If a person studies consistently, they become a learner. If they work consistently, they become disciplined. If they improve consistently, they become successful. The behavior defines the identity, and the identity shapes the future. Consistency is therefore not only a strategy for producing results, it is the process by which a person becomes the kind of individual for whom those results are inevitable. Consistency also reduces fear. Much of what paralyzes people exists in the space between intention and action, in the hesitation and overthinking that precede beginning. But when a person acts consistently, they spend less time in that paralyzing space. Action builds confidence, repetition builds familiarity, and as something becomes more familiar, it becomes less frightening. Fear does not disappear entirely, but it loses its authority. The consistent person moves forward not because they are fearless, but because they have trained themselves to act despite the fear. In the end, consistency is not about perfection. It is not about performing flawlessly every single day or never falling short. It is about returning, again and again, to the effort. It is about refusing to quit when progress feels slow, refusing to stop when motivation has temporarily abandoned the field, and refusing to mistake gradual growth for the absence of growth. Success does not arrive as a reward for occasional brilliance. It arrives as the natural consequence of consistent effort, sustained long enough to compound into something undeniable. Stay consistent, stay patient, keep returning to the work, and in time, success will not be something you chase. It will be something you have quietly and completely built.